Oi, oi, alright, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is Doodle Review. If this is your first time here, we sling album reviews like it's going out of style. Usually it's guitar-based stuff, but I like to mix it up every couple of days with different genres, and today we're talking about the collaborative house odyssey produced by Tiga and Hudson Mohawke called L'Ecstasy. Let's get into it. So, for those that aren't familiar, and that was me prior to this record, Tiga is a Canadian DJ, house and electronic music producer who's been active in various forms since the late 90s. He initially started his career predominantly as a DJ and club owner, building a pretty live and happening dance scene in Montreal at the turn of the millennium. Over time, Tiga, his real first name is Tiger, by the way, gotta love hippie parents. Over time, he became more and more involved in remixing and production. His catalogue of solo material with this release now sits at just 4 albums, which is relatively slim considering his years in the game. However, he has a long list of remixes and DJ sets to his name. As mentioned, I wasn't actually familiar with Tiga before this, but it was Ross Burchard, aka Hudson Mohawke, that drew me to the album. Since his various collaborations with Kanye back around the Yeezus era, I've always tried to keep up with the producer, and I thought his 2022 release Cry Sugar, an album that ran the gamut of euphoric 90s house in all of its forms, I thought that was amazing. It was actually, I think I put it as like number 8 in my top 50 albums of 2022. Cry Sugar, as it turns out, is not a bad point of comparison to L'Ecstasy, because where that album is an hour-long journey through many facets of club music, so too is this record. But where Sugar was appropriately quite sweet sounding, it really focused kind of predominantly on big euphoric 90s sounds. L'Ecstasy takes us more into some of the darker corners of the club. Many tracks here sound like they have an icy, sharp and mirror chrome-like finish, and instead of drawing you in with bouncy big beats and breathy synth pads, we get lots of very clipped, cold, hard and vacuous sounds. Those will sound like negative descriptors, but I don't mean that at all. The record is just very edgy and serious. It has a mission and it sets out to achieve it. Among some of the album's various styles, there are a fair few touches of acid house, and I'm going to take a quick detour from this review to explain why this resonates with me, and why when you hear me tackle a dance or an electronic record like this, you might often hear me latch on to the acidy elements. And the reason for that is that back in college, like 2010, 2011, I went through a bit of a phase of trying to produce acid house. The context of this is that during my music tech course, I hit it off with one of the older students, an older dude who was like banging to the Rolling Stones and knew loads about all of the old school rock bands that I used to like. And from time to time, he'd ask me to listen to the music he was turning in for coursework, which I was surprised to find was house music. Gradually, this evolved into him telling me all about and turning me on to the world of acid and Balearic house music and that whole kind of ecstasy-fueled scene from the late 80s into the early 90s. And we ended up working on music, effectively making a bunch of like 10-minute plus acid house odysseys. No idea if they were any good. I don't think I have any of them anymore, but it was a lot of fun. Big up to Jeff, wherever you are. But anyway, that's why when a song like Velvet Sky of Dreams comes up, I can hear the trace amounts of acid in the synth tone, or the undercurrents of it in the climax of Silence of Love, or the huge great doses throughout Bye Bye Cell. If you don't know what I mean when I say a synth has an acid sound, it's a word used to describe synths that have that kind of squelchy phasing tone to them. And if you imagine a synth sound is made of various liquids mixed in a cauldron, an acid sound would be when that cauldron is boiling, bringing all of these unpredictable bubbles to the surface. It's an interesting sound in the context of this record, because where before I was describing the album as icy and cold, well, acid in some respects is kind of the antithesis to that. It actually, as a sound, feels quite organic and even warm. And that's kind of the interesting thing about the acid sound as a whole, and why as a tone it's often used now 40 years after its heyday, because as much as it can be quite inviting, it's also dark and sinister, which is why it kind of works in the context of this record. As I alluded to before, this record is a long one, clocking in at about 75 minutes, and while it definitely makes use of this runtime by touching on so many different styles, there are a couple of points that do lose my interest, with tracks that either go too long or try something that, to me, just doesn't really work. Feel the Rush is one that is cool for a bit. It feels like one of those super hypnotic club tracks, and I can imagine it being good in the room on a night, but on record it drags on and gets a bit tired. It may only be 4.5 minutes long, but it feels it. The other track that has me reaching for the skip button is Duro. It has this really bubbly beat in a way that could almost be Timbaland-esque if one of his productions had been deconstructed and rebuilt into like a darker house or techno cyborg like Robocop style. The track melodically is built around these very high attack synths pushed through a sequencer, but they go from being in time to gradually devolving and falling out of sync with each other until it sounds like someone just button mashing. It has moments of sounding cool when the beat and everything kind of syncs up, but the long stretches where they fall away from each other just get a bit grating. Overall though, these are really the only tracks I don't care for, and even then I still find them interesting in part, which I think is pretty impressive for a 70-minute record. Keeping in mind my sweet spot for an LP is like 40 minutes, I definitely have to give respect for any album that goes way beyond that and manages to hold my interest. That being said, when you have absolute bangers like Love Minus Zero, it's easy to see why. This is a track built around a horn sampley synth and over time builds into a really cool 90s vibe with almost euphoric synths and a kinetic beat and fantastic backing vocals. This is actually one of the few that bucks the cold and dark trend of the rest. Polyvox is another banger as well. It's all over the place but in a really good way. It has a classically emotive and powerful dance vocal with break beats that come in and out until the climax, where they work alongside these stuttered gated synths to make for a really intense but super satisfying club track. Overall, despite its slightly cold clinical exterior, I found this an incredibly enjoyable club journey, and while there are a couple of tracks and moments that aren't to my taste, I think this is a worthy companion to Cry Sugar, and I'd give it about a 7.3. Alright, let's knock it on the head then. That's what I think, but what about you? Tell me how you feel in the comments below. While you're messing about with clicks and taps in that old region of the screen, press the subscribe button while you're at it as well. I'm sure it's kicking about down there. It's been alright, isn't it? So let's see more of each other. Subscribe, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hurl some abuse in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, mate. Bye.